listening. I am Sister One.
And I'm Sister 2.
And today we're going to be talking about the topic of loneliness. We live in a world where we have the rise of technology, but more and more people are lonely. Even with the technology that we have, more and more people are finding themselves in a lonely situation where they have no friends, they have no family even, and a lot of people struggle with this isolation. But we wanted to encourage people to use this season of loneliness as a way of getting closer to the Most High.
I want us to also know that being lonely is not a bad thing. The message we want to pass on is that we want to see the positive aspect of being lonely. We can make use in a way that will benefit us so much, or we can use to build our lives, build our relationship with the Most High, and then at the end of that season, you'll see that you have a better life. Today, there are a few things we are going to look into. We're going to look into the life of some people in the Bible because loneliness, we see it in the aspect of, okay, sometime in your life you have to be isolated from people you know, from the environment that you're used to, and you want us to see that sometimes it's just for a reason. You might not know the reason at that moment. So with that, we're also going to include when people are singlehood. There are benefits of being single. It doesn't matter how many years or how long you've been single or you've been longing to have a partner or get married or have a family. But I want us to see the positive aspects of that it's not always bad if you can make good use of that moment in time.
But we also have to realise that nowadays it's not easy to find friends, especially with, the social aspect. There's not many things to do in many areas, and if there are things to do, it requires money, and nowadays people just don't have the money to socialise like they used to in the past. So it can be very difficult to meet people, especially when you go outside. And I know in the UK, a lot of people, depending where you live, they're not very comfortable in speaking to their neighbours. You can spend years living on a property and never knowing your neighbour. Whereas if you go to somewhere like the Caribbean or maybe Africa, people are more approachable and they're more inclined to say hello to you. Whereas in certain parts of the world, this is seen as very strange. So how does one get to meet somebody when there is no one? So the first thing I would suggest is to pray. Pray for good friends. I know in the world that we live in now, it's very hard to find decent friends, especially ones that are in it for the long haul. I think a lot of people, they don't have a lot of patience for one another. They don't want to even put time into building relationships anymore because they don't value relationship. They don't value commitment. And commitment is not just in a marriage, for example. Commitment is also in friendship. And a lot of people, they don't want to put the effort, they don't want to put the time in order to make these relationships work. So of course, if you don't want to put the effort and you don't want to put the time in, it's not going to work. Friendship involves work. Just like a marriage or, a relationship or when you're in the dating phase and getting to know somebody, friendship also requires work.
Yeah. When you say, praying before you choose your friends, that is what is actually hard for some people to do at the moment, because at that time or that moment of isolation, people feel so cut off from what they are used to from friends and all that. And as I said earlier, it could be for a reason. So it could be the reason why you are isolated at the moment is just for you time to take time out and pray. For number one, for relationship. Number two, for every other aspect of your life. So if we're not careful to choose what we want or choose our friends or people that we relate to, we might be very desperate in a time of loneliness, and then we'll enter into a relationship that could be very damaging or something that is not really going to benefit us. So that is why we are saying that in a time of loneliness, number one is a time of prayer, and through prayer you get closer to God. People like Jesus, Jesus did it. It was a time before he even chose his disciples, before he started his ministries. He was isolated in the wilderness. He was praying early in the morning. He would wake up and he would go to the mountain to pray. So some other people in the Bible, if you go to the Old Testament, people were taken away from what they know, from the environment, from their friends, from their families. And then that was the moment God now built them into what he wanted to use them for. So I would say it's a time of building a deeper relationship with God. And in that moment, every other thing in your life can line up if you make good use of that time.
Yeah. What I found in the Bible, especially with Abraham, Moses, yes, they were isolated and they were moved from what they knew to be home, and they were moved from the distraction in order to gain a deeper relationship with God, to get to know God personally, so that they can be used in order to do the will of God. So by getting to know God the way he intends for us to get to know him,
Yeah, we move
can
away
use that.
from distraction. I think yeah, that's what you're
he
going.
has to remove
Yeah,
us from the
remove
distraction.
Yeah.
Because the distraction can stop us from doing the will of God. It can hold us back.
Yeah.
So in order for us to do the will of God, we have to know God. We have to know who he is and what he wants us to do.
Yeah.
So from that, it would involve a lot of changes. We would have to change. We would have to move. We would have to become isolated so that we can grow in the will of God and what he wants us to do. And that may even mean being removed from bad company. The Bible says in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 33, "Do not be deceived. Bad company ruins good morals."
That's right.
Not only that, it also says in Proverbs 13, verse 20, "Whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm."
Yes.
So isolation can be a form of protection as well.
That's right.
God protecting you from harm, from people who may want to do bad or people who may not have your best intentions. It can also be a form of separation.
Yeah, separation, maybe for God to use someone for a particular purpose.
Yeah, in order for you to also renew your mind.
Yeah, renewing mind. That is very, very important, because we're so clouded sometimes with a lot of things. So at a time of isolation or a time that you're just on your own, I think this is a time of try to review things and then bring yourself back to your original self. Do you understand that? Because there's so much distractions in our world. There's so much distraction. So how do we balance social media in the time of loneliness and also taking care of our spiritual life or our relationship with the Most High? How do we balance the two?
It's not easy to do that. I think in terms of staying grounded and understanding what God wants us to do, we would need to shut out a lot of things. We need to also be careful what we're watching, what we're listening to as well, in order to build a relationship with God. We'd also have to we're going to have to give up a lot of things. We're going to have to make a lot of sacrifices. And that might mean friends as well. You're going to have to sacrifice those who you know or have known maybe all your life. You're going to have to get rid of certain things in your life in order to grow with God. And that's just the reality. I know for myself, I spent many years without having friends. I have no friends whatsoever. And yes, it was very, very lonely, but when I look back, I'm glad that it happened because it helped me to start reading the Bible more and getting to know God for who he is more and more. Because truth be told, if I wasn't removed from my family and if I wasn't removed from the people that I was hanging around with, I wouldn't be where I was today. So obviously God saw the bigger plan. He saw that I wanted to know more about him, and he used that to help me to learn more about him. And this is something that I'm grateful for.
Wow, this is the positive aspect of loneliness or being separated from what you know or from your people. This is a positive result you have got, because if this should push you into being closer to God, seeking God at that moment, you will get the greatest benefit of it. But some people actually at that moment is a moment of okay, it just plunges them into depression, low self-esteem. So how do we handle that in the time people when people feel lonely, which is also what we are saying here? Is a time for you to seek God on your own. It's a time of reflection. It's a time to get back yourself back, because maybe you have been through a lot of distraction, a lot of things, trying to impress people, a lot of pressure around you. Yeah, if you find yourself in it at a time or in a moment where okay, all those things are out of your way, you move from the city or town or country where you used to be, and now you're your own. I tell you what, it is a time for you to just have yourself back, think on your own, set your own goals, do your research and all that, because the distraction is less now. So I want us to see the whole thing we are saying here. We want us to see the positive aspect of being lonely, because a lot of times people see it as oh, I don't have friends, I don't have people I relate to, this and that. It's not a time to complain. There's a reason why you are lonely at that time. So with this now, I want us to talk about singlehood. Let me say a woman has not gotten married, and there's this agitation or this anxiety about going into a relationship. What do we have to tell the single women out there, many women actually? What do we have to tell them?
I would say the first thing that we would need to do is to self-reflect. Self-reflection is the key to understanding your faults and where you need to change as a person. Because unless you recognize your fault, you're not going to know where to improve. So self-reflection is not going to be very easy if you're a person that don't like to hear truth. That's just the fact of it. If you're a person that likes to live in denial and you don't like to hear truth and you don't take constructive criticism very well, it's going to be very hard for you to self-reflect. So it's about putting your pride aside and understanding that in order for you to grow as a person, you're going to have to understand where you went wrong in order to make positive changes in your life. That's why in the previous videos we were also talking about learning how to cope with trauma. Sometimes people bring these traumas into their friendships. Because they don't know how to deal with their past trauma, they bring the negativity into their friendship. They don't know how to receive loving friendship. They don't know how to receive care, purely because they have not dealt with the things of their past. So I think self-reflection is also another thing that should be of importance to do when you're trying to gain new friendship when the time comes.
Very, very important. Very, very important. So it's one of the things that we could do at the time when we are being isolated or lonely. Self-reflection is very powerful, to be honest with you. It's something you do to yourself. You yourself do it, not another person doing it for you. That's the beautiful thing about it. It's a time you tell yourself the truth. It's a time you tell yourself the things you have done. Think about how you can get things better for yourself, how you can do things better. So now you're just, if you're being honest with yourself, you always come up with or come out with a positive outcome. But if you're trying to deny something, like living in denial, I tell you what, you still be remaining your problem. So that is what it is. So being single, we're saying, is a time of self-reflection. It's also is a time, as we've been saying, to get closer to the Most High. It's a time to have a deeper relationship with Him. It's a time to begin to probe into things. Do your Bible study, you on your own. But a lot of times we don't make good use of this period. It's like, okay, we keep going on social media, see what people say or what is going on. Some people, they think where they can get life partners is just go online dating, online this is like online whatever will offer us everything we need in life. That is what the society is presenting to us now. But I can tell us that we can put these things aside sometimes, and then we face the truth, go into ourselves, is me and my God this time. Because if we carry on with this distraction, a lot of people, they end up getting the negative aspect of life, or not getting what they really want in life. The society we are living in technology, they have devised a means of trying to appeal to people's emotions, And at the
or
end,
their weaknesses.
or their weaknesses.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it doesn't even solve the problem. We don't get
Yeah.
solution from all that. So, yes.
The thing is, with social media, it's good to a certain extent. However, what I find is, with people being on social media a lot, they have social issues. So they're not able to communicate effectively with someone face to face. However, they're able to do it over the computer or over the laptop or over their phone. But if you go to them face to face, they don't have the communication skills in order to communicate with somebody effectively because they don't know how to. They've not exercised it. They've not used their social skills. So they're not able to grow and develop in that area because they've not paid attention and they've not used the time to develop their emotional skills in order to build effective relationship. Because in order for you to build effective relationship, you need to be able to have the communication needed in order to have a long-term friendship.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. Yeah, as you said, social media, there's a lot we learn from social media. But the most important thing is that we shouldn't allow it to be a distraction.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the most important thing. Not allow it to be a distraction. So the key thing we are saying today is that yes, make good use of your loneliness or a time of isolation, and you come up with a very positive outcome. Yeah, it is possible. It is possible. Rather than it's a time of counting your woes and a time of depression. I have people that are crying out for help, and then all they could get is just from one medication to the other. And that's not the solution to it. Yeah. So
I believe if you address the spiritual aspect, then the rest will follow. For example, your physical health, your intellectual health, your emotional health, and your social health. Because once you address the root of the problem, which is spiritual, yes, we live in a physical world, but let's be honest, the world is also very spiritual.
sure.
It is very much spiritual, and I believe that with the spiritual aspect, it will help us to gain knowledge on the rest of the areas that we need to improve on in our lives. So that's why the process of being isolated can be a huge benefit for growth.
That's right.
Because we know that sometimes this can be a temporary time.
Of
And we
course.
want to use that temporary time in order to build ourselves so that we are ready for the next phase of our lives.
Yeah. Another thing also which I want us to address about singlehood is the aspect of self-reflection. Now you begin to reconsider what you want. I mean your goals and your priorities. Because if you focus on impressing people around you, it's very damaging because you can never impress people. People will always have their opinion. You can't stop them. But what happens is that when you now sit back and think about what you want, how you can improve yourself. So don't allow people's pressure to put you in the state of desperation. Yeah. So, but the time of reflection is a very good time for you to think about what you want to do, irrespective of what people think about you or people's opinion about your life.
Yeah.
So we can live our lives. The time of loneliness or isolation is a time you think about your life, live your life, create your own world. Yeah, you create your own world in a way that, okay, people can still like what you do, cherish what you do, as long as you're not doing the wrong thing. But this pressure of, okay, I want to do what others are doing, people are pushing you to do what they are doing and all that, it causes confusion in people's life.
It's called peer pressure.
Peer pressure, yeah.
And that can lead us to do things that we're not supposed to be doing and find ourselves outside of the will of God. So that's why it's very important to choose your friends wisely when you do come out of that period of isolation.
Yes,
and understand that even if you have people around you, you are to live in accordance to God's way, not in accordance to the world. If other people want to live according to the world, then that is their choice. But it's down to you to make sure that if you are around people that are not living right, you must be very cautious. The Bible says not to partake in the sins. So really, we shouldn't be hanging around people that are doing wickedness anyway. Well, when I say hanging around people that are doing wickedness, of course we all sin, but the point is not to make a habit out of sinning.
Yeah.
Yeah, and understand that not everybody's gonna go in your direction.
Yeah. This is a time now you now know what you want. You go for it. Jesus, after being separated for a while, he now chose the disciples. He started his ministry. Everything become clear. That's another thing. There's that clarity when you are selected, because they can be so clouded with so much distraction when you're in the midst of people, friends, families. You can't see clearly, you can't hear clearly.
Yeah.
So it actually helps when you come out of that period, because that period is temporal. It doesn't last forever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Some people think, okay, this is how my life will continue to be. Now, life is very dynamic. So when you come out of it, now you now see clearly to know the type of friends you want to, the type of relationship you want to go into.
Mm-hmm.
It's very important, because a lot of people don't have this time of isolation, and then they go by people's suggestion, people's opinion, they go by the pressure around them, and at the end of the day they end up making very damning mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
So, in summary, we just want to let people know that isolation can be a form of growth in order for you to grow closer to God, and we can use this as a time to build ourselves to the point where we gain more knowledge about who the Most High is and what He wants for our lives. So when it's time to come out of our isolation period, then we can use the skills and the knowledge that we've gained in order to help others to learn more about God as well. So thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed the message and have a lovely day.
Bye.